Hi, I'm DIYte. In my last video I showed you a really simple way to paint MDF using these drawers I've been recently building for my daughter's bedroom as an example. In my last video I told you not to get too caught up about painting the end grains other than sanding them, priming and then sanding and then glossing. That gives you a pretty good finish for all but the most professional applications, but today in this video I'm going to show you how to achieve an even smoother finish on the edges, on the end grain of the MDF. And the way we're going to do that is by filling the end grain of the timber, then sanding and then painting it. Now this is the finish that you get when you just sand and paint the end grain of the MDF, which actually is a pretty good finish, I think. It's not remotely rough. You can just see a little bit of mottling on the grain here. Here's another example, some bathroom cupboards I built. And again, if I just zoom in there, you can see the end grain on that. A little bit rough. I mean, it's smooth to the touch, but just looks a little bit mottled in appearance. Okay, in today's toolkit, obviously the piece of MDF. 2-part wood filler. This is from Metalux. It's styrene free, so it doesn't have that smell, that strong smell that you associate with wood filler. I've then got a couple of filler knives, decorator's knife there, and a continental filling knife. Kind of whichever tools work best for you in this sort of situation. Those are two knives that serve me well. And some sandpaper and a wooden block. This is 120 grade, but you can probably go a little bit finer than that actually. Okay, so we've got our 2-part wood filler. I'm just going to mix up a small amount on a piece of Perspex. Okay, that's mixed. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to apply a really thin coat of it to my mock-up of my cupboard door here, which I've created from a couple of bits of MDF. This is actually how I made the doors that I've just shown you earlier. 2 bits of 12mm MDF glued together. I'm just going to very thinly apply it to the edge of the MDF. It's better to do it before you've primed the MDF, because I'm informed by the manufacturers of this wood filler that you get a better adhesion. You see that I put on such a thin coat you can almost not notice it. I love this 2-part filler because it goes on so beautifully, and you've got about 5 minutes to work on it, and then it sets a few minutes later, enabling you to sand it and then get painting so that you never lose any time on the job. I have applied it thinly, but I've put enough on so that the end grain is completely covered. Because what I'm going to do next, when that's dried, is just lightly sand it off. Okay, it's about 10-12 minutes since I applied the filler. I'm going to now use some 120 grade sandpaper with a wooden block just to lightly smooth down the filler on the edge of the MDF. I'm doing this outside just to minimise the sort of dust and stuff. I don't want to take off the filler completely, because obviously that will defeat the whole object of what we're trying to do. But I just want to smooth it down so that it's a nice even coating on the edge of the MDF. Right, I hope you can see this. That actually feels incredibly smooth, much smoother than it does when you just sand the MDF end grain itself. You see here, you've got to be a little bit careful because I've actually taken it back down to the MDF there, so it's a bit of an acquired art doing this. But if you've got a sort of project where you're building some shelves or something, I imagine you'll get pretty good at this. So that's looking good. I'm now going to apply some primer paint, see how we get on with that. So I've got some standard, bog standard quick quick dry wood primer undercoat here. This is actually Armstead, but as I often say, these are all much for muchness. I'm not going to bother painting the whole thing because I'm just really trying to demonstrate to you how the end grain looks. Right, I'm going to let that dry, and then depending on how it looks I might put one more coat on. Okay, the primer's dried. I've got a few little specks, a few little indentations. This isn't the end grain coming through as you'd think it would be. I haven't completely put the filler on in a uniform manner across the surface, so for the purpose of this video I'm just going to apply a little bit more filler into the gaps. It's a quick job. What I think this demonstrates to you all is that if you're going to do this on your end grains, try and get the filler as consistent across the surface as possible. Otherwise you'll end up having to take this additional step that I'm taking now. I'm applying this really thin, so literally all I'm doing here is filling the little tiny holes, and I'm not leaving any additional filler on the surface because I want to do minimal sanding to get this off, because I don't want it to start taking off the primer. Okay, I'm going to leave that for a few minutes to dry. Okay, the filler's set. I'm giving it very light sand, and I'm just going to do one final run over it with the primer. Now you can see it's beautifully smooth with no pot marks or other imperfections. Okay, the primer's now dried, and I have to say that is beautifully smooth. So what I'm going to do now is apply a coat of water-based satin so that you can see what it finally looks like. Probably normally use a roller to do this, but didn't really see the point in using a roller on such a small piece of wood. But I would get a smoother finish if I used a roller. Okay, wait for that to dry now. Okay, one coat is dry. I'm now going to apply final top coat of the water-based satin, so I can really show you a genuine paint finish. Again, if I'd used my short pile mohair mini sleeve roller, which I like using for things like this, I'd be getting an even smoother coat than this. Right, I'm going to let that dry now. So that's it. In a relatively short period of time I got myself a sheet of MDF with the end grain on it beautifully finished. This was 2 coats of primer and 2 top coats. If we were to compare the edge of a unit that I painted a week ago my usual way, which you can see, although it's smooth, it has a slightly mottled appearance, with the sheet that I did in this video. Hopefully you can see from that there's no comparison. The only thing that you can see on this sheet of MDF now is the brush strokes. There's not an end grain in sight. So I think we can conclude from this, if the job you're doing requires a completely professional finish on the edges of the MDF, then the approach as outlined in this video of applying a 2-part wood filler, lightly sanding it and then painting on top of that is definitely the way to go. If on the other hand you're at home flinging together a few cupboards or drawers or shelves or whatever, and it's the function rather than the look that is of critical importance, then I would still go with the slightly more laid back approach of just sanding and painting the edges of your MDF. So I hope you found this video useful today. If you've got any thoughts or questions, then do please leave them below the video. And as ever, if you're new to my channel, I'd love to have you subscribe. You can do that by clicking on the link here.